In spite of a quick side quest to Pyra, Vox Machina still makes it in time to meet with Osisa's mate, the Sphinx, Kamal Giari. And not only did they acquire the legendary sword Mythcarver, but they have learned the location of two of the vestiges of divergence. The first of which is in Westruun, where Grog will meet his greatest challenge. So grab your D20s and roll for initiative, because it is once again time for Cartoon versus Campaign. Greetings fanboys and fangirls, I'm Erod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and welcome to Cartoon vs. Campaign, where we compare the Legend of Vox Machina with the Dungeons & Dragons campaign that inspired it. But first, the usual disclaimers. There will be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen the Legend of Vox Machina Season 2 or Campaign 1 of Critical Role, you might want to stop the video here. You've been warned. Also, the main difference this time around between the two stories is that the order of events are radically different. So, for the sake of clarity, I will be following the order of events of the campaign. So now that that's clear, let's begin. The Kill Box. So when we last left off, Grog challenged his uncle Kevdak to a one-on-one duel for the leadership of the Herd of Storms, as well as to acquire the Titan Stone Knuckles. In the cartoon, Grog challenges Kevdak alone, and is secretly followed by Scanlan and Pike, who get caught. All the while, the rest of the party returns from their adventure in the Fey Realm and report into Whitestone, where Alora by Soren brings them up to speed with the situation in Westruun. So Percy and the elves stealthily rejoin the others, waiting to jump in and help Grog at a moment's notice. In the campaign, however, the party never splits, so when Grog challenges Kevdak, the rest of the party is all waiting on the rooftops surrounding the perimeter, waiting for Grog to give them the signal to jump in and kick ass. In both versions, the one-on-one duel escalates into an all-out brawl between Vox Machina and the Herd of Storms. Here are the differences. In the cartoon, Skinny Grog fights Kevdak one-on-one, hand-to-hand, but deals no damage, and just gets pummeled by his uncle. Until the Herd captures Scanlan and Pike, and Kevdak changes strategies. He decides to break his nephew mentally as opposed to physically. So he impales him on one of the wooden stakes surrounding the perimeter, and then goes to kill Pike in front of him. But as it turns out, this is just the jolt that the Goliath needed, as Grog hulks out, regains his barbaric strength, and starts kicking Kevdak's ass. After a bit, the Stormlord has had enough, activates the Titan Stone Knuckles, and grows to 12 feet tall, and regains the upper hand, putting Grog at his mercy. This is when Grog notices that the rest of the party are on the rooftops, finally proclaiming,
"My strength comes from my friends,"
and lets out the battle cry.
Vox Machina! Fuck! Shit! Ah!
Meanwhile, in the campaign, Grog and Kevdak fight using weapons. Kevdak has his blood axe, and Grog chooses to use a warhammer in the absence of Craven Edge. Kevdak immediately grows to 12 feet tall and starts kicking Grog's ass, making him drop his warhammer and impales him on a wooden stake right away. Which, by the way, during the game for the battle map, Matt Mercer created these wooden stakes with toothpicks that he took from a Chinese restaurant while the cast was having lunch one day. And that is just delightful. Beaten and badly wounded, Grog humbly drops to his knees and says, "Clearly I've been a fool. You are truly a foe to be reckoned with. Vox Machina, fuck shit up!"
So it begins.
In the cartoon, what ensues is an epic sequence where we see our heroes wrecking ass to a heavy metal tune composed by Sam Riegel and Peter Habib. Here, the Herd of Storms learns undoubtedly who among them are the Dragon Lackeys and who are the Dragon Slayers.
That is badass.
In the campaign, our heroes don't just attack the Herd, they also make some pivotal attacks on Kevdak himself. The most significant being that Scanlan casts Hold Person, freezing him in place, which allows Grog to get some significant hits on his uncle, including a really bad gash on Kevdak's left bicep, using his own blood axe. In the cartoon, Grog actually manages to cut Kevdak's arm off with this attack. In the campaign, it is Percy who blows his arm off with bad news. The arm still hangs by his side by some tendons, but Grog finishes the job. In the cartoon, the herd starts to gain the upper hand at this point. In the campaign, however, Vox Machina is kicking ass. So much so that Kevdak tries to run away and orders the rest of the herd to start killing hostages. Unfortunately, while Vox Machina is trying to stop him from fleeing, a few hostages do die, including a little boy named Theodore. In both versions, the battle ends exactly the same way. Vexalia proposes a crazy idea and Grog is all for it. She flies by on her broom and captures the barbarian in her magical necklace, then flies 50 feet above Kevdak and releases Grog, who shouts, and cleaves the abusive douchebag in half.
He had to split.
In both versions, the herd now recognizes Grog as their new leader. In the campaign, however, Kevdak's second-in-command, Greenbeard, offers Grog the opportunity to prove himself by slaying the last person to challenge Kevdak's authority, his son and Grog's cousin, Zanror. So Zanror and his pregnant wife are brought before Grog in chains, waiting to be executed. Grog lifts his uncle's blood axe and proceeds to decapitate Greenbeard. In both versions, Grog makes Zanror the new leader of the Herd of Storms, and they agree to slay the Black Dragon Umbrasyl together, proclaiming that at dawn they will plan.
Wait, we gotta wake up at dawn?
In the campaign, Grog demands the Titan Stone Knuckles as his prize for slaying Kevdak, in the place of the leadership that he turned down. In the cartoon, he just takes them. Also, in the campaign, Pike, Keyleth, and Percy make it a point to revive the little boy who was slain during the battle. In the cartoon, our heroes spend the night partying. The ladies of Vox Machina pass the Bechdel test, and this is when Scanlan sings with Kaylee. They retire to a bedroom upstairs together, where a Vox Machina reference is made.
I disguised us all as cows.
And he finds out just why Kaylee is so interested in him.
Wait, I'm Daddy?
The belly of the beast.
In the cartoon, Scanlan hilariously can't remember Kaylee's mom and encourages his estranged daughter to do as she must. Kaylee can't bring herself to kill him, so she activates the immovable sword and leaves him tied to the bed, pinned beneath the blade. In the campaign, there's no immovable sword. This is an obvious replacement for the popular D&D item, the immovable rod. And I have to say that as far as replacements go, this is a great one. So, while in the cartoon our heroes have just a few hours to prepare for Umbrasyl's arrival, in the campaign they have a full day in which they do a lot of stuff. For starters, they take the little boy they revived, Theodore, back home to his mother. After which our heroes go to Pike's great-great-grandfather Wilhan's house, and like I said before, the encounter is way different. In the cartoon, Pike and Scanlan take Grog to Wilhan to be cured of the corruption caused by Craven Edge. In the campaign, our heroes go to make sure that the old gnome has survived all the terrible things that have befallen Westruun. While in the cartoon Wilhan is very wise and nurturing, in the campaign he's just a senile, silly old man. Vox Machina finds him hiding under the floorboards of his house. Pike calls out, "Pop-Pop, are you there?" To which he responds, "I'm not here!" Our heroes help the old gnome out of his hiding place and he thanks them by giving them some homemade moonshine. Scanlan suggests for him to stay in his mansion, to which Wilhan responds by candidly elbowing Pike and saying, "He has a mansion!" and then proclaiming aloud for everyone to hear that Pike is of marrying age, much to her chagrin. Scanlan then takes Wilhan inside the mansion and lets him stay in his room, ordering his spectral servants to bring Wilhan whatever he wants. He then takes the opportunity to ask Wilhan for his blessing to propose to Pike, and in that moment, he goes from silly old man to protective father, and responds by saying, "I'll think about it." After leaving Wilhan in the magnificent mansion, our heroes go to run an errand they've been putting off. Way back, when they were at the refugee camp, they ran into an old acquaintance called Master Qual, who asked Vox Machina to search his home in Westruun for an item he desperately needs. It is at this point that they go to Master Qual's home and search for the item in question. But instead, they find a golem, who momentarily joins the party, and Keyleth names Fassbender. After that, Scanlan and Vax make sure that Kaylee and the survivors made it out of Westruun okay, which they did. Keyleth spends the night training with Fassbender. Scanlan proposes to Pike, and the gnome cleric gently and politely turns him down. And then, and only then, does Vox Machina call it a night. In both versions, they spend the next morning preparing for the encounter with Umbrasyl. In the campaign, Xandror wants to ambush Umbrasyl in his lair inside Gatshadow Mountain, where the dragon won't be able to fly and get away. Keyleth, however, feels it would be better if they trap him when he comes to collect his tribute, as he won't be expecting it, and everyone agrees that this is the best course of action. In the campaign, as per usual, we see them prepare step by step for the encounter, including Vax and Scanlan devise their daring plan to attack the dragon from within. Vax even passionately kisses Keyleth just in case something goes wrong the next day. In the cartoon, however, we just cut straight to the ambush. In both versions, they capture the dragon with a trap that Percy designed. The herd helps hold the beast, and our heroes, including Fassbender, that very useful golem, deal as much damage as possible, while the creature is restrained. But then things go sideways, so Vax and Scanlan go to plan B. In the cartoon, it is Scanlan who comes up with the internal attack.
You're a mouthful of acid, no way.
There is a way. The other way.
And they enter the beast by gaining a great deal of velocity via the Deathwalker's ward, and Scanlan encapsulating them with the probing fingers of Bigby's hand. In the campaign, their plan is not as, straightforward. First of all, it is Vax who comes up with the plan, and they do not use Umbrasyl's, rear exit. Instead, Vax drinks a potion of diminution, which shrinks him down to about 3 feet. So now he can dimension door with Scanlan, so the two of them teleport inside the dragon. There's just one itty bitty little problem. In order to dimension door, you have to know where you're going. And Vax and Scanlan are trying to blindly teleport inside Umbrasyl without knowing anything about dragon anatomy. So Vax ends up trapped under Umbrasyl's skin. And Scanlan also finds himself trapped, but in between the dragon's musculature, close to but not inside Umbrasyl's stomach. Also, you know how in the cartoon they get inside the dragon and everything inside his stomach is just perfectly lit? In the campaign, not only are they trapped, but they find themselves in complete darkness, so they have no idea where the hell they are. In spite of all this, Scanlan still manages to miraculously wiggle into the dragon's stomach and activates the immovable rod, which prevents Umbrasyl from flying away. In the cartoon, he uses the immovable sword that Kaylee left behind. In the campaign, Vexalia spots Vax under the dragon's skin using her keen eyesight, and fires an arrow near the lump of flesh to give her brother a means of escape. Vax spots the arrow and starts wiggling out of the hole that it left behind like Ace Ventura wiggling out of the rhino. In both versions, Umbrasyl has had enough and takes off flying, allowing the immovable item inside to just tear through him. Grog attaches his blood axe to the chain of returning, in the cartoon it's just a rope, and throws it at the dragon like a grappling hook, with the intention of holding the creature in place. But the plan proves to be flawed, as Umbrasyl takes off with Scanlan and Vax inside of him while bringing Grog along for the ride.
The Hope Devourer.
The rest of Vox Machina immediately follow. In the cartoon, Vex is on her broom, and Pike and Percy on Keyleth's back in giant eagle form. In the campaign, however, while Vex does follow on her broom, Pike and Percy each follow on their own giant eagle that apparently Vex can summon. Keyleth stays behind, attempting to use a keystone to teleport to the exact point where Vax'ildan is at. Unfortunately, our heroes are still in combat, and it will take several rounds for the stone to key into Vax. So for the time being, Keyleth is just standing there. In the cartoon, Umbrasyl shakes off Grog. The barbarian activates the knuckles and survives the fall, but still sustains heavy damage from the impact. Thankfully, Pike arrives just in time to heal most of his wounds, but in the process, uses up all of her healing powers for the day. Meanwhile, Vax and Scanlan punch out of Umbrasyl's stomach using Bigby's hand, and then use the Bardic Mitt to lower themselves safely. Unfortunately, the vicious dragon disperses Scanlan's construct, and our heroes fall. Vax prays to the Matron of Ravens for help, who grants him wings, and in one of the most epic moments of the season, The rogue uses his newly granted flight capability to catch Scanlan and fly him down to the ground safely, where they reunite with the rest of the party.
I have a broom and you get fucking wings?
Unfortunately, in the campaign, this very pivotal moment in Vax'ildan's story arc doesn't happen until much later, and we will talk about it when we get there. So our fallen heroes save themselves in a much different manner. Scanlan does escape by punching through the wound left behind by the immovable rod using Bigby's hand, and then floating away. And Grog does get shaken off by Umbrasyl, but he tries to survive the fall by making a parachute out of a fancy robe he just so happened to have. But that proves fruitless. Meanwhile, Vax falls out of the hole that Vex'ahlia made, and prays to the Raven Queen as he plummets, but doesn't get wings. Umbrasyl turns invisible and gets away. So, Vax and Grog are falling. It is Scanlan's turn in the combat round. Sam only has enough time and speed to save one of them. So, in one of the coolest moments in the campaign, Scanlan chooses to catch Grog. He then polymorphs the Goliath into a giant eagle, which increases his intelligence. Scanlan then jumps onto Eagle Grog's back and the two nosedive after Vax, who miraculously grabs hold of Scanlan's cloak as they fly by divine intervention from the Raven Queen. And then Eagle Grog flies them both to the ground safely, where they reunite with the rest of the party. It is at this time that Keyleth finally keys into Vax's location and teleports to where he was, in midair. Thankfully, she just so happened to be in stone shape, so she hits the ground like a meteor, leaving a huge crater behind, and then just changes to her regular shape and she's fine. Oh, and she accidentally left Fastbender behind. I'll do my best not to cry. Instead, our heroes are joined by a whole new companion. One of the Goliaths from the Herd of Storms catches up with them, an elderly one-armed female Goliath named Shale, played by Chris Perkins, the principal story designer for Dungeons & Dragons, as well as the game master for Acquisitions Incorporated. Shale wants to restore her honor by either assisting Vox Machina in slaying the dragon or dying gloriously in the process. As a fellow Goliath, Grog totally gets her point of view and welcomes her. In both versions, our heroes debate what to do next, but they ultimately agree that it would be better to attack Umbrasyl in his lair in Gat Shadow, while he's still wounded and vulnerable. In the cartoon, however, Grog is badly injured at this point, so Vax scouts ahead alone. But this proves to be a bad idea, as Umbrasyl gets a drop on him. Vex, Percy, Keyleth, and Scanlan follow, while Pike stays behind to tend to the wounded Grog. The 4 party members that followed also get badly beaten. And then finally, Pike and Grog join them, in spite of the Goliath's injuries. In the campaign, Vax does scout ahead, but he gets back to the party without incident, and then they all enter the Dragon's Lair together. This initiates a pretty standard combat round, during most of which Umbrasyl remains invisible. He deals a great amount of damage to our heroes, knocking out both Percy and Trinket, and almost killing Shale. However, Keyleth uses Fairy Fire, forcing Umbrasyl to use his last legendary action to resist her attack, which makes him lose his invisibility. Now that our heroes have a clear target, they start concentrating their attacks and wearing down the dragon, until Grog delivers the finishing blow. For those of you keeping score at home, that's 2 major villains that Grog defeats in the campaign. In the cartoon, the battle is far more one-sided, with Umbrasyl having the upper hand through most of it. There's also a great deal more focus on the vestiges, as they are among the few things that have any effect on Umbrasyl, as well as the dragon trying to get the weapons away from Vox Machina. Inevitably, our heroes run out of options, and end up at the dragon's mercy. Scanlan even considers running away, but thankfully, he doesn't. So while Umbrasyl is monologuing, Scanlan sneaks up and takes back Mythcarver, and proceeds to jab the powerful vestige into one of the few parts on the dragon that is not protected by his nearly impenetrable hide, his eyeball. Once the all-powerful blade is inside the beast, Scanlan imbues it with bardic energy, unleashing a huge blast that blows off a considerable chunk off of Umbrasyl's head, effectively slaying the dragon. This is yet another moment that was already great in the campaign and was somehow made 100 times better in the cartoon.
Wait! You're alive, motherfucker?
Oops.
Oh, you're okay!
In both versions, after slaying Umbrasyl, they raid his horde. In the campaign, Shale leaves to inform the Herd of Storms that Vox Machina slayed the dragon, and gives Grog her dragon tooth necklace, which increases the value of his hit die. Keyleth butchers Umbrasyl's body and collects valuable pieces that they can sell and trade later. While they do take some treasure for themselves, they do agree to save some of it for the people of Westruun so they can rebuild their town. In the cartoon, no mention is made of sharing the treasure with anyone. And Scanlan finds a magic key that we have yet to learn the relevance of.
I killed the dragon, didn't I? I should get all the motherfucking magic keys.
And thus, in both versions, our heroes decide to reconvene in Whitestone, where they can recuperate and plan their next move. And that's where we're gonna hit the big to be continued, and we're gonna pick up the epic compare and contrast in a few weeks in the conclusion of this round of cartoon versus campaign. See you then.